Okay, kids and parents, like this is an easy topic, right? Because I'm crushing it. Don't talk to Nick, Jack, or Ari. Before we start, I thought, let's start with a little bit of humor. Parenting was much easier when I was raising my non-existent child, hypothetically. Having children is like living in a frat house. Nobody sleeps, everything's broken, and there's a lot of throwing up. Soon as you say, my child will never, here they come nevering like never before. Oops. When I raise my voice, my kids call it yelling. I call it motivational speaking for the selective hearing. My friend asked me recently, what's the most difficult part of being a parent? And I replied, without a shadow of a doubt, it's the kids. And lastly, setting a good example for your children takes all the fun out of middle age. Yes, I said that. Parenting. Everyone, literally everyone, has got an opinion on parenting. Technically, we're all experts to varying degrees, even those of us who don't have kids, because all of us were kids at some point in time, someone's child, whether by birth or adoption. So it's a subject we can all speak to. And it's kind of crazy, but it is the one topic in the entire world that every single person has insight into. Think about that. No matter what generation you were born into, no matter the circumstances of your birth, the country, your culture, your faith, your class, your family of origin, all of us, every single human, has something to say about how we were raised, the people who raised us, and their lasting impact on our life. It is a topic that can elicit a vast array of emotion, from great joy and warmth to anger and unresolved hurt, because it is a topic intimately tied to our most vulnerable and impressionable time in our life, our childhood. That first primary relationship is fundamental to our development. It has a powerful influence over who we become, how we view ourselves, how we view the world, authority, marriage, the family structure, friendship, and even how we might view God himself. It affects how and if we are able to love, trust, bond, forgive, grow, and mature. An entire industry has been built on, and thousands of books have been written about the relationship between our mom and our dad. The wounds or the confidences we carry and their enduring imprint, for better or worse. Parenting is a great joy and a privilege, but it also is a serious business. It's a weighty endeavor, for you have the power to either elevate or diminish a child's soul. I've always been captivated by the parent-child relationship and its impact. How some kids are able to overcome harrowing childhood experiences, and others, having been raised in seemingly happy homes, really struggle. Is it nature versus nurture? Are our temperaments set from the get-go and we are just who we are? Or is there a chiseling and a sanding and a refining involved? What is the role of parents to nurture, discipline, provide, and protect? Or, as suggested in the Carnegie studies of the 1960s, should parents relinquish their children to the experts, teachers, educators, psychologists, researchers who've been trained in the field? All of a sudden, schools became responsible for teaching character counts, nutrition, sex ed, family structures, etc., etc. And oh, the parenting books that have been written, online resources, blogs, influencers, websites, seemingly endless information. How do we know what works? What's right? What's effective? So I'll admit I jumped down the rabbit hole, as I often do when I'm preparing to teach, and I read up on a lot of parenting styles and philosophies through the generations. The 4 main parenting styles were based on studies by Diana Bromrand, a developmental psychologist and Stanford researcher beginning in the 1960s. These 4 parenting styles, which I think most of you will recognize as authoritative, authoritarian, permissive, and neglectful. I'm going to give you a short description on each. Authoritative is generally considered the most balanced, integrating discipline, high expectations, and love. Authoritarian is strict, demanding, and struggles to release control as the child grows. Permissive avoids conflict. It's indulgent. It's got a few rules, and it's more kind of like a friendship. And neglectful is disinterested, passive, offering little emotional security. Now, while these 4 are still considered the main styles, we've branched out into a myriad of other options, including attachment parenting, helicopter parenting, free-range parenting, lawnmower parenting, hotbox parenting, gentle parenting, bulldog moms, tiger moms, the list goes on. It really is quite overwhelming. And depending on the parenting method, the circumstances, and the temperaments of the people involved, we can produce overachievers or underachievers, confident or anxiety-ridden, strong or weak, loving or cautious, trustworthy or suspicious, obedient or unruly, faithful or faithless, respectful or insolent, kind or cruel kids who will eventually grow up to be those kind of adults. Anybody want to be a parent? Many argue that the first 18 years can set the course of a person's life. That is a daunting thought. And honestly, most parents won't know for sure till their kids are full-blown adults if their efforts were even worthy. This topic is so big and vast and so very, very personal. No matter what side of the coin you're on, as role of parent or adult child dealing with your own past. If you spend any amount of time talking about the subject with friends, family, or your small groups today, the one thing we will all agree on is there's no one size fits all. In fact, it's rare if the same parenting method works in the same family. So as I overthought this subject more and more, I decided I need to make a disclaimer up front. I am not going to get into the weeds on the how-tos or the rights and wrongs or on the preferred parenting methods, because every parent, child, and situation is so unique. Likewise, I recognize my audience isn't very homogeneous. We range from 25 years of age to 95 years of age, and we have everything from single women to great-grandmas and everybody in between. So what I'm going to try to do is teach to the ideal. The clear directives Paul has outlined in these 4 verses. The specific application is yours to sort out. Good luck. So let's turn to Ephesians 6, 1 through 4. I believe we will find some very sound counsel in this first century version of Parenting 101, even without the extensive academic research and studies of childhood development. God's word is remarkable that way. God the Father might just have something worthwhile to say to parents and children. Again, children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your mother and father, which is the first commandment with a promise, so that it may go well with you and that you may enjoy long life on earth. Fathers, do not exasperate your children. Instead, bring them up in the training and instruction of the Lord. So let's look at Paul's basic principles for the parent-child relationship. Honor, obey, train, and instruct. Let's begin with honor. I believe Paul is very intentional in quoting the fifth commandment in this text. It gives weight to the child-parent responsibilities he outlines. Honor your father and mother. It is widely considered the hinge commandment of the 10 commandments. It bridges the first 4 to the last 5. How we love God, and then how we love our neighbor. Ideally, our childhood home is the teaching ground for our first relationships. They introduce us to God, church, school, society, and authority. And if done well, our first relationship with our mom and dad, it helps us honor then our Heavenly Father and honor our neighbor. It sets man up for a moral, just, mutually respectful, and God-honoring society. That was the archetype of the 10 commandments. It is important to note that honor is a moral choice. It's not based in feeling or circumstances or even love. You don't have to love your parents, but you are required to honor them. It is a decision commanded by God to treat your parents with respect and dignity the whole of their lives, so that it may go well with you. This promise doesn't mean we'll never suffer and we'll get to live to be 100. But the commandment promises that when we honor our parents, our relationship to them and others and our relationship to God will in fact create a greater peace and wellness in our life. And please note, there's no asterisk in the commandment stating honor your mother and father unless your parents were lame or unloving or unlikable, or worse yet, demeaning, neglectful, or abusive. We don't have an out. Honor is God's standard we are called to meet. It's in the top 10. As adult children, we have to figure out then what that looks like. And for each of us, it will be very different. For some, it will be a happy, joyful task. And for others, it may be a challenge. And it may involve sound counsel and a lot of prayer. But God commands us to do it. And to those of us who are parents, let's make it easy on our kids and try to be parents worthy of honor. Having set the foundation on this fifth commandment, now let's consider the charge Paul is calling parents and children to. Obey. What impresses me most about America is the way parents obey their children. Why does that quote simultaneously make me laugh and a tad bit uncomfortable? Perhaps because there's an awkward, ugly truth in it. Many of us have made our kids the epicenter of the family, the sun with which we all revolve around. Their schedules, their activities, their whims, their maladies, their emotions set the tone of the household. Afraid to say no, we have unwittingly handed the reins of our house over to the least capable, least experienced person in the family. You would never let a young new employee be the CEO of a Fortune 500 company or a rookie be the general manager of a sports team. Why then do we let our kids run our households? Paul implores, children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Let's start with who Paul is addressing. Children. Children are young people, particularly between the age of infancy and puberty, 18, 19 years old. those that are physically, emotionally, and financially dependent on their parents for their care and keeping. Side note, it's important to recognize we are not calling or talking about independent adult children here. You at 30, 40, 50, or 60 are not required to obey your mom and dad. Honor, yes, but obey, no. To obey is to do as one is told. I know some parents and educators, they kind of get itchy with that word obey. It sounds so patriarchal and harsh and dictatorial, squelching a child's creativity and their free spirit. But there is an important intent in this simple directive. To begin, children obeying their parents is meeting God's standard. It's right there in the Word. That standard of obedience sets up for a well-lived life and a successful society. Ideally, there's that word again, it is the home we first learn the importance of hierarchy, authority, and submitting to age, experience, and wisdom. One pastor said, when disobedience becomes the norm, it has an imprisoning effect on the family and ultimately society. When parents are passive and don't teach their children to obey, everyone else has to deal with it. Teachers, other kids, other parents, future employers, the police, and society at large. There's a lot at risk. If we don't teach and grow our children into mature young adults, they will grow into immature adults. I don't think that's the goal. There is intent and purpose behind this command to obey. It's not about being mean. It's about setting parameters, creating order. No will not crush your child. The world says no all the time. No teaches self-correction, resiliency, boundaries, problem solving, strength and difficulty, how to respect and get along with others, and it often is a form of protection. Dave Gunlock once wisely said, children need to know two things. First, who's in charge, and second, that they are loved. I loved that. It's so plain, so simple, and yet really profound. There's such a comfort and security in knowing who's in charge. A 5-year-old and even a 15-year-old really doesn't want to be in charge, even if they're in the middle of pitching a fit. They may not like your rebuke or the boundary you set, but when kids are loved, they will know ultimately that your discipline as well as your blessing comes from a place of care and affection, even if they don't realize it till they're adults. But they'll get there one day. An author cleverly remarked, there are countless books written on parenting, but there are no books written on childering because there's no one who would read them. No kid wants to read about how to obey and be a better kid. So it's our role to put obedience into play and set our kids up for success. Clear rules and boundaries with consistent praise and consequence helps children understand how to behave, how to obey. The biblical directive is actually bigger than your child, and it's bigger than your discomfort in disciplining your child. Each little lesson culminates into a bigger lesson that will impact which way your child will go. My grandma, aka my Bubba Sophie, who was my favorite person growing up, ran a daycare for 30 years because she saw a need for working mamas. And boy, did she love on those kids, but she put up with no monkey business. She would often say to a timid or uncertain mom who was reticent to discipline, if it's not cute when they're 5, it's not cute when they're 15. Think about that. Moms, don't be foolish enough to think your kids are going to grow out of it. Patterns and deep grooves are set at a very young age. Disrespect, selfishness, anger, entitlement, tantrums are hard to unwind the older a child gets. Chuck Swindoll aptly points out that Jesus himself, the very Son of God, through whom the Father created all things, continued in subjection to his earthly parents, Joseph and Mary. Therefore, nobody can say that submission and obedience imply inequality or inferiority. Rather, voluntarily accepting a role of subjection leads to harmony and blessing. If Jesus can do it, little Johnny can. It is proverbial wisdom that will play out in small and big ways. A teen who won't respect his teachers, or adult who struggles to hold down a job because they've always had an issue with authority. Many adults even struggle with submitting to and obeying God because of issues they had as a kid. It's a lot to weigh out. But if you think obeying is hard, not obeying is harder. So moms, both of littles and teens, more than likely your kids aren't highlighting and memorizing Ephesians 6, 1 through 4. My kids did, though. But anyways, so help them out. Most kids don't have the wherewithal to self-govern or self-regulate. Moms, you're the mom. Be the mom. Set the standards. Be consistent. Teach them to obey. And yes, be parents worthy of obeying. Train and instruct. Oops. You need a license to drive a car. You need a license to catch a fish, but they'll let any damn fool be a parent. Isn't that the truth? No experience required. Paul continues, fathers, do not exasperate your children. Instead, bring them up in the training and instruction of the Lord. Here is where it gets really interesting for this first century audience. As Sherry mentioned 2 weeks ago, this idea of mutual submission between husband and wife was really quite revolutionary. Likewise, Paul is calling fathers, in our case parents, to a higher standard. Children, like wives, are not property. Paul is pointing to a mutual submission that characterizes a harmonious family. We have a part in it as parents. The command, children, obey your parents, does not give mom and dad divine sanction to be harsh, unloving, tyrannical, or abusive. Dictatorial wrath produces anger and fear. God doesn't do that to us. Why would we do that to our kids? Chuck Swindoll notes some ways that parents may goad or exasperate their children toward anger, anxiety, resentment, and bitterness they may carry the rest of their lives. Unreasonable demands for perfection, constant nagging over minor infractions, not leaving room for freedom of expression and personal growth, lack of encouragement and affirmation, harsh, unloving rebukes or cruelty, public embarrassment, verbal or physical abuse, inconsistent discipline, showing favoritism to one child over another, unfair or extreme discipline that doesn't match the offense, overprotective hovering that stifles growth. Whoa. Do you recognize any of those, either as a parent or from your own childhood? Rather than frustrating and diminishing our kids, we are called to bring them up, not beat them down. We are called to nurture and raise up our kids. We do this through training and instruction. We need a balance of both. Training refers to discipline, and instruction denotes good counsel. Train. Consider the distance runner, the discipline and training that she undertakes, the activities she engages in, what she declines in preparation for the race. It's hard, discipline. Paul is calling parents to train, to discipline their kids, but to do so in a just and even-handed manner, in a godly way. Proverbs 13:24 reads, "Whoever spares the rod hates their son. Whoever loves him is diligent to discipline." All right, I'm not going to get into the pros and cons of spanking. Again, those are details for you to sort out, particularly based on the age of your child and the offense. But by way of example, my kids knew not to run into the street when they were little because they would get a swat. It was a big no-no. Now, at 4, I could have sat them down and had a very serious conversation about physics and the body in motion remaining in motion and the effect and the velocity and the speed of a 1-ton car hitting a child. But for them, the simple understanding was that if I run into the street, I'm going to get a swat. It's a no-no. That's a type of discipline, a form of protection, a boundary set for a young child. I do not care if I hurt my kids' feelings in that moment. Their safety was paramount. And as your child grows, their boundaries should change as well as the discipline that follows. But the rules and expectations have to be made clear all along the way, as well as the consequences or praise readily enforced. And as kids mature, hopefully we give them more freedom and responsibility as they earn it. The goal is not to raise up nice, dutiful boys and girls. The goal is to raise up strong, faithful, independent men and women. My husband would often say when regarding Nick and Jack, I'm not interested in raising boys. I'm interested in raising men. And that's where instruction comes into play. Tim Russert often reflected, the older I get, the smarter my father becomes. Instruct. To instruct is to counsel, to teach. It requires intentionality. So you have to think about, what are your family values? How will we incorporate our faith into our daily lives? Do my actions match up with my words? If we hope to raise independent children who make good decisions, we need to teach them how to think critically. Speak of our experience, our wisdom, and faith, but then ask them to think about and consider the repercussions of their choices and their actions on themselves and others. Reminding them it's not always all about them. Discuss, counsel, consider, and listen. Help your kids think about the things they're thinking about. Children want to be known and heard. It's one of the best ways you can show them love. More than giving them money or a gift. But in order to do that, you actually have to be really involved. You need to let them know you love them and you are for them. Otherwise, your input and your instruction will mean very little to them. Here is the hope, moms. As discipline wanes, you aren't going to be grounding your 30-year-old child. Hopefully, your conversations will grow. Hopefully, they will still seek out your good counsel throughout their lives, and together you will grow a relationship rooted in God, based in love, mutual respect, kindness, and joy. There are many adult daughters and mamas here, I know, in this room, who have modeled that for me. How to nurture a lifelong relationship with your child. And to them, I am grateful. Honor, obey, train, and instruct. That is the call. Now, everybody wants a how-to plan, an easy implementation. Well, I'm not going to give it to you. I told you that. So, whether you are thinking about your own childhood experience right now, your relationship with your parents then, and maybe even now, or you are a mom currently wading through these waters, or a seasoned mom with generations below you, your story is too unique for a one-size-fits-all fix. But I do have some thoughts on how you might land on what's right for you and your family, whether it be your family of origin or the family you are currently building. So here we go. 5 quick things before I wrap up. First, do life in community. Whatever stage you are in, you need people who know you, who love you, and will speak truth into your life. Don't make decisions in a vacuum or in an echo chamber. Talk to people who actually might challenge what you're thinking about. Whether you're trying to figure out how to discipline your 5-year-old, or if you should ground your teenager, or how to deal with, honor a challenging parent, surround yourself with good, wise counsel of godly women of all ages. No one generation has the market on wisdom. Second, never underestimate the power of humor and fun. We are called to be joyful people, not dour and harsh. Fun builds memories and relationship. To be able to laugh at yourself or a situation is a gift. Levity can diffuse a tense moment or a dark mood. It can bring things into perspective. A mirthful spirit often intimates that it's all going to be okay. It really is. Third, be grateful. You can all look at what you didn't get, or you can focus on what you did get and find gratitude in the smallest of gifts. Rather than focus on your parents' shortcomings, consider what they did well. Mirror the good stuff and change what you didn't like. You're an adult now. You get to choose. And as parents, if your kid isn't quite the kid you thought they'd be, meeting your hopes and expectations, or if you're in a really, really tough patch, love them. Love them and pray a lot. I was walking with a girlfriend this Monday, and she remarked, I think parenting is part of our sanctification process. Our sanctification process. And here's the reality. God isn't surprised by the families we're in. Even in the brokenness, we are called to be thankful. And it's amazing how gratitude changes your perspective. Fourth, forgive. Those of you who had lousy parents, really lousy parents, I am sorry for that. That was not my experience, so I can't appreciate that. But it must have been really hard, and I imagine it's a lot to untangle. Still, if your parents were less than perfect, and most are, might I encourage you to bring that stuff before the Lord, pray about it, and try to forgive them. Not by your own strength, surely, but by the strength of Jesus. We are called to forgive as Christ forgave us. Long harbored resentment and bitterness will seep into every pore of your life eventually. But thankfully, you don't need to prove yourself to your mom or dad anymore. You don't need to carry those rocks of shame or anger or fury because they are not over you. God's love, God's mercy, and God's grace is over you. So seek support and good counsel if needed, and then forgive. For some, it might result in a reconciled relationship. For others, it might not be a path to full reconciliation. But you're still called to forgive. And then honor your parents as God commands by living a good life. Being a great parent. Being a catalyst for change. Breaking a bad cycle and building a new family legacy that will ultimately honor your parents' name. Even if they don't have the capacity or the wherewithal to see it. Because when we honor our parents, we honor God. Lastly, look to your true Father. We must look to our true Father who loves us unconditionally and perfectly. Talk to him all the time, lifting up your cares and prayers, joys and struggles. Tim Keller encourages, go get what you've always wanted from your parents, from God. Stop blaming them for their shortcomings and failures. Stop blaming them for not being God. The only place you can get true Father love is from God. If you wonder what that love looks like, go to the story of the prodigal in Luke 15. The Father's love is not based on your perfection, but on God's perfection. Ladies, God can meet all the needs your parents never met, your spouse is failing to meet, and your kids are struggling to meet. God will love you in a way no one will ever love you. I have always loved that the preeminent title, the beloved role of God is God the Father, and we his children. He does not call us subordinates or minions or burdens. Through Jesus' work on the cross, we are his adopted kids who share in Christ's inheritance. He is the prodigal father who welcomes us home, open-armed. So whether you had loving, supportive, honorable parents, or difficult, angry, exasperating parents, or you are in the middle of trying to figure out this whole parenting thing right now, the ultimate hope, the ultimate joy, the one size fits all fix, is found in the love of our true Father. Let us honor him, obey him, and lean into his good training and instruction.